What?
Means design.
Yeah. Long. That's how you explain.
What?
Long food. Long food.
Longer.
Okay.
Very important. Just left it, then we left it.
Okay, so we are on what you could call the third section, the third paragraph of Beit Zayin Tzadik Hey, which begins with the word u-le-achorah. Our effort over here is focused on trying to understand, at least to present, the relationship between chochmah and binah. For we know one principle, that binah comes from chochmah and is engaged in deciphering what's in chochmah. On the other hand, binah and chochmah are categorically apart, as we have explained for a long time. And therefore, how do these two totally different worlds, so to speak, correlate? And how does binah come from chochmah? If this is a different world. And we explained, very briefly presented a new concept, that binah from chochmah is a relationship that can properly be described only as yesh and AYIN. Yesh may AYIN. Yesh may AYIN, as we explained, is truly a miraculous type of an occurrence. It does not occur, the yesh does not come from the AYIN per se. It's a divine interference, a divine effect to bring the AYIN to the yesh. And we explained to some extent, to some degree, the significance of this. And if you saw the discussion on the WhatsApp, there was additional points, clarity brought out. The yesh of binah is called the yesh may AYIN. You can explain it from various angles. The final point is that even though binah comes from chochmah, chochmah is in total concealment from binah. Binah has no recognition of what chochmah is. There's no way that binah can have recognition of what chochmah is. They're two different categories. And therefore, the phenomenon that binah comes from chochmah is really what's called a divine effect. We'll try to discuss more about this. Again, there were some points made on the WhatsApp. And here we come further to this thing. There's an apparent question here. We cannot understand what we just finished saying. Binah comes from chochmah, and chochmah is totally misalwain, concealed itself from the binah, like AYIN legabe the yesh. Ein mover. How can you understand it? Harei nekudas hahaskolo. Is it not that nekudas hahaskolo, the point of haskolo, the point of this conceptualization, the chochmah of chochmah, ba bivchinas hasaga bebino. It ultimately comes down in a hasaga manner, in a comprehension manner, in binah. If binah has any comprehension, it is due to the fact that it has access to the nekudas haskol. We explained yesterday, or the last couple of years, yesterday, the significance of this nekudas haskol. that at that point it comes only as a nekuda. It comes forth from the essential principle, what chochmah is, and comes down into a haskalah, into a revealed seichel. But this seichel comes in a nekuda form, because it is still totally representative of the chochmah principle.
Haskalah is revelation, mamash.
What?
Haskalah is revelation.
Haskalah means conceptualization, yes. To conceptualize something means you know what you're conceptualizing. Yesterday I pointed out that you reflect the difference between conceptualization and comprehension. They're very, very different. We mentioned many times the principle, the phenomenon, that Henry Ford designed a new method of production. It's called the production line, the conveyor belt. It was an interesting concept that didn't exist before. He analyzed.
To remain on this call, press 1. Returning to the conference room.
He analyzed what happens to his cars as they've been produced. And he saw that this process could be very well organized to become very efficient. Because yes, there are many, many steps, but if you organize these steps in a certain order, and you have these various levels come in proximity to a certain station of a person, each person will have his function, and as the conveyor belt brings the unit, he'll put in his little screw. At the end of the conveyor, on the end of the line, the whole car will be finished. It was a very interesting concept, and it worked. In terms of efficiency, it worked very well. As I mentioned, the statistics was that this conveyor belt was able to produce run down a car from the assembly line every 7 minutes. It's a phenomenal accomplishment.
Could this be related? Maybe you know about this because you come from Russia. There is a guy named Stakhanov that invented also. It created an expression, Stakhanovism, which means
Stakhanovich,
yeah.
Not Stakhanovich, Stakhanovich.
Stakhanovich. So he invented the maximum possible efficiency in a factory, and he was very.
Yes, I don't know much about it, but I know the expression in Russia. Yeah. In Russia, that expression meant how well you can drive your slave workers.
Yeah, exactly.
How much can you? That's not what happens over here.
Right. So it's different.
Okay. It's a different thing. All right.
What's the nimshal here?
Oh, the nimshal is that this union he didn't invent anything new. The car was being constructed by these, utilizing these steps, but the concept of putting it in an assembly line and organize it in such a way, in such an efficient way, that's what's called a concept.
Assembly line, it's called.
No, they conceptualize the assembly line. This concept dawned on him when he was studying the process. He said, "Well, wait a second. Why can't I do this?"
So wait, this seems like a yesh yesh. Are we saying this is like a yesh AYIN? He took a process and he rearranged it. That's using that as a yesh AYIN?
No. The process is yesh, no question about it. The concept of
okay.
arranging it this way.
Okay.
This comes from a. This is like a yesh AYIN in a sense. Should we go into this? Yes, we should go into this. How did it develop by by Henry Ford. I mean, he was not such a wise person. The point is, he was very familiar with the process, what has to take place. And in his mind, the minute you have all the parts, the car is there already. All you have to do is put it together. So why can't I, so to speak, imitate as if the car is there already? How do you imitate the car is there? If you have all the parts in the organized way, the way it is used when you put it together, in that order, you are feigning the concept of the car is there from before it was even built. You have all the pieces before you need them. This idea that you have the pieces before you need them is what's called conceptualizing the car on the conceptual level. Because factually it's not there. And he was able to figure out how you can actualize the concept on a practical level. This was the assembly line. Okay. This Nekudas HaHaskalah, this point of Haskalah, of conceptualization, comes from deep down in the essence of the chochmah. Like I said, in this case of the car assembly, in order to come up with this idea, you have to have seen the car complete before you even started. You're conceptualizing this car before we even begin to build. You go and you set up all the pieces that will be needed to put a car together. But you don't need them. You're not building the car yet. You haven't even started. In my mind, the car is already built. Why? Because in chochmah you perceive the finished product before it happens. This is how this assembly line materialized. Okay. This is called what's called Nekudas HaHaskalah. Now, coming back to our silly mashal, right? There's a finished product of the car. The finished product of the car is a seal box. But one who is an engineer and so forth, he knows what this seal box contains. And he said to himself, if this is what this seal box contains, let me break it open and lay it out as if what all the components that are inside the seal box. This way, you will have the seal box back and put it back together again. In other words, the whole idea of this assembly line came about from being able to conceptualize the final product. And it is the dissemination of the final product that created. This is called the Nekudas HaHaskalah. I'm envisioning the final car. Now, I'm envisioning it in a manner that allows itself to be created. Putting it that not just in an envision, but in a logical form. Right? So this Nekudas HaHaskalah we were saying up until now, that this Nekudas HaHaskalah relative to binah is AYIN legabe yesh. And binah comes from this nekuda of b'chinas yesh ayin. Like in this passage that we just now described. Yesh ayin. And therefore we have this question now. It would seem difficult to understand this, to put this in perspective. This nekuda, this principle that is contained in the chochmah, ultimately it is deciphered in the binah in a full comprehension. And in binah you fully understand what the concept is. V'chol hasogas habina, the entire process of comprehension of binah, he b'nekudas haskola, is actually the hasoga is into the nekudas haskola, into understanding the nekudas haskola. Nekudas haskola is what binah gets. And therefore, how nikra chochmah ayin legabe binah? How do we then go back and say that chochmah is ayin from the perspective of binah? Binah, that it's ayin, is a non-existent element. It's concealed, completely concealed. Where in fact, that this is what binah delves into. Into the nekudas haskola. It's not ayin. If it were ayin, there was nothing to delve into. You know the messages come up and they block. The nekudas haskola is a real presence for the binah, to the extent that the binah can delve into it and decipher it and bring it out. How do you say that it's ayin? Therefore it is imperative, we must conclude, to say Shagam nekudas haskola, that even the nekudas haskola, as we said before, nekudas haskola, this is the lowest state of chochmah, where the chochmah, even though it's a nekuda, but it's a mitzias, it, so to speak, it takes up room. And even nekudas haskola, he b'chinas havdola mehabina. It is in havdola. It is categorical separation from binah. It does not intermingle with the binah. It's in its own reality. Ad to the extent shenikra ayin legabe habina, that it can probably be referred to as ayin, as a non-existence relative to binah. If we say that chochmah legabe binah is yesh ayin, even though this is nekudas haskola, and nekudas haskola is already a presence that binah can decipher, therefore it has to be that the nekudas haskola is ayin. If it is ayin, so how does binah then go into it and decipher it? So we have now this, so to speak, contradictory statement. We say that the binah is able to go into the nekudas haskola and break it open, and fully break out all the things that these components. On the other hand, we say this is ayin. It's a categorical different. Ayin legabe yesh, yesh ayin. What is then the secret in this inyan? The secret is who, and that is. Okay, we ready?
Yeah.
The who, and that is.
Shmuel's not here, so I need to be the one.
That's right, so you have to answer that. The who, and that is. Sheba'asichli de chochmah. that within the sichli of chochmah, this is the Haskudas Haskalah, which is sichli, which is not ayin, which is not etzem, it's a sichli. We described the difference between the sichli throughout these weeks or days. The sichli of chochmah, in this sichli of chochmah, gam kein meir bechinas bazei bechinas ho'etzem. In the sichli of chochmah, even there, see, because we said before, we had a principle that we have discussed and pointed out. It's not possible that the same element, it's called chochmah, on its upper level it is not sichli, it is etzem, and on the lower level it's sichli. A completely different world. It's one entity. Therefore, this truth of this entity, the principle of this entity, permeates an entire being. And we said that on this lowest level, it's called the sichli. It is no longer the etzem; it's a sichli, and that is what's accessible to binah. But then, at the same time, we say that this is categorically apart from binah. Therefore, we so to speak, by our own admission, we are coming to recognize that what we are really saying is that in the sichli of chochmah, in the mitzias, in the zman u'mokim chochmah, there is the recognition, meir bazeh, shines therein, bechinas ho'etzem, the aspect of the etzem. The etzem element. The etzem element does not consist of pieces. It's not a component based. Etzem is an essential truth. If we should translate this in our moshel of the assembly line, the one to whom the assembly line was a concept that he brought out from his essential view of what a car is. So at this point, where it is in the Nekudas Haskalah, he sees the etzem, the entire finished product. He doesn't see it as components. He looks at it as a finished product, even though it consists of many parts. And this is similarly in this binah, that in the chochmah, that part of the chochmah is called haskalah, Nekudas Haskalah, which becomes accessible to binah. In this Nekudas Haskalah is meir. Meir means shines or has the impact of the bechinas ho'etzem, the etzem element. Bechinas ho'etzem. Bechinas ho'etzem means the phenomenon. Bechinas means the phenomenon of the finished product. Not a composite, but the concept itself. AYIN, which means to say, to put it in, so to speak, in pointed words, the Nekudas Haskalah, the chochmah, that in the Nekudas Haskalah of the chochmah, which is Haskalah, Nekudas Haskalah, which is a presence and mitzias, nevertheless, in that meir bazeh, therein shines, therein has the impact, dakus etzem ho'inyan hamuskal. Dakus, fine essence of what is being comprehended. Dagus means the fine. Fine means it is not really a tangible thing as yet. The comprehension therein consists of the fact, hey, this is true. Not I could see how this can happen. Look at this. This is true, so to speak. This dagus. Not referring to it as a feasible thing, but as a truth. That dagus, that fine insight of the chochmah is that element of chochmah that it cannot possibly come to hasaga, to comprehension, because it's intangible. And that part of it that does come to hasaga, because we said that this is what hasaga binah is delving into this into because our scholar horag hachitzenius mizeh. It is only the chitzenius of this muskal. Binah can decipher the muskal, but only on the chitzenius level. This is not the nekudas our scholar. This is not the principle of its truth. Hainu, which means hasichli levad, just the sichli part. What sichli part? Just the composition part. Loy hargoshas ho'atzmi shebanku. Not the sensing of the atzmi of the essential truth that is contained in this likud. Coming back to our assembly line motion. If you were going to explain to someone what the assembly line is, and you brought him to, so to speak, to the assembly line, and showed him all the heaps of parts organized in this order, how would you present it to him? Would you present it to him by saying, this is a car? Or would you say that these parts can put together a car? If you put them in those order, they will have a car. You won't say to him, this is a car. Because this is a car is beyond being able to be expressed in parts, and beyond being able to be comprehended in binah. But you take the chitzonius of it and say, from this he can build a car. This is what we said. An interesting phenomenon of the assembly line concept was that even though it worked, they produced cars, but in a real sense, it really didn't work. Because the cars that came down the assembly line were lacking something. They were lacking completeness. they had what's called the lemon element of this. They were limping cars. Every car needed to be brought back to the dealer within a month to be checked out and say, okay, what happened? What failed? It's inevitable that something failed. Because every person who put the screw in, he did not have the sense of a car, he had the sense of a screw. And you can't build a car by putting in a screw. So, binah, by the time you start looking at the screws and how to put it together, you're looking at the chitzonius. You don't have the sense of the etzem. If you don't have the sense of the etzem, then you're not building an etzem, a real thing. Okay, so we're saying this. This is that what comes into hasaga is only chitzonius. Chitzonius means that the chitzonius of the nekudas haskala. Haino hasichli levad, which is just the sichli. The sichli is that which seichel can present. A sichli means that which is based on components and design. Lo yahargoshas hu atzmi sheba, not the sensing of the atzmi that's in the nekuda, the etzem of the essence that is contained in this nekuda. The etzem of this nekuda, as you said in this muscle of the car, is a car, not an assembly line, not a potential car, but an factual car. That's what it's about. That does not come down to the binah level. Binah cannot see it, the binah sees only the components, the chitzonius. Even though therein also is contained the etzem. From the chochmah perspective, this is the etzem. In other words, from our mashal, we could say that the one who designed this assembly line, who assembled all these pieces in one heap, to him this is a car. But the person who comes to decipher it and build a car from this, he only sees the parts, the components. Doesn't see the etzem. From the binah perspective, it's only a mitzias. From the chochmah perspective, it is an atzmi. But binah only sees the chitzonius. Okay, this is it. Yes, so. So I'd like to have some feedback. Did we learn something this morning?
I'm not sure if it was already explained, but I'm still wondering how does nekudas seichel reach binah? How does anything come from
In its essence, it doesn't.
Does not.
But I've been pointed out, nekudas haskala takes up room, no matter how minute.
So
this room is a chitzonius of that nekudas haskala.
yeah, but how would AYIN be producing anything that takes up room?
Right. So we explained that the nekudas haskala comes at the point where the room, so to speak, the Metzias, the Chetzonit Metzias, but is totally bottled to the Seichel.
So what's totally bottled?
The Seichel. How does Nekudas HaSoul come? We said it comes as a result of Yigia, of labor.
Because of the bittul of...
Because of the bittul of the Seichel.
The AYIN produces a Nekuda?
The Nekuda is, it doesn't produce, the Nekuda is seen, the Nekuda is there in the AYIN, but it's not a Metzias.
Oh, so it doesn't, sorry, it doesn't really take up space, it's just seen, even though it's not taking up space.
That's right.
Oh.
You know, I mentioned the idea of a point.
Yeah.
Those of us who studied a little bit the concept of a point is on the one hand does not take up any place.
Right.
It's a point in space, but it's a point in space.
Right.
The Nekudas HaSkola, from the chochmah perspective, it is a non-entity. It's AYIN. But on the other hand, it can be seen and demonstrated from a Metzias perspective due to the bittul that the Seichel has to this Nekudas HaSkola. This is why it can only come after a concerted effort of a Gia. If we should kind of project what transpired in Henry Ford's mind as he was contemplating this assembly line, with all his experience and all that, what will actually take place is, I'm not happy with the way we do kachas. I have to come up with a much better plan. This imperative is something which brings out an essence, an insight that is a non-entity and becomes an entity.
Well, in his case, it doesn't really seem like bittul. It's more like let's improve this, or something could be better here. But okay.
Well, it is bittul that he himself, his mind was totally subservient to the product that he was trying to build.
Right.
Even as what we mentioned just now, the concept of the point, which is a point which does not really take up space. A point in space which doesn't take up space. It takes a tremendous effort to recognize, to conceptualize this idea.
It does because the mind prefers things that are more defined.
Not prefers, it's limited to things that are you're thinking, right? If it takes a second to think, it's in time and space.
So to put your mind on a point takes
you have to go beyond the thinking process.
Okay. So getting the point takes a while.
All right, this is it for this morning. Interesting how everything in the world can become a muscle.